Hello dear viewers, support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it, and also make sure you comment your thought. Now let's start the video. Highgarden 2094 AC. Marjorie. How she had controlled her anger was a testament to her grandmother's training, to her education, and to the fact that Sansa was as angry as she was. She had stormed off eager to be away from the woman, to not have to look at her. Sansa had followed, and both of them had raged about Catelyn Stark and what she had said about Jon for almost an hour, before realizing it had done neither of them any good. That night, she had ignored the woman at dinner, as had Sansa. Then when she had gone back to her room, she had lain on her bed, looking at the drawing, and felt the rage both return and calm at the same time. One day, the realm would know the truth of Jon. They'd know, as she did already, that his name was as true as his heart, as true as he was. Sansa broke her fast with her and her grandmother the next morning, leaving Lady Catelyn to break hers with her mother and father. Then they had gone to lessons, and it was while they were waiting for the tutor in the yard that Lady Catelyn had found them. Her voice calm, even though the displeased look on her face was anything but. "Sansa, what are you doing, sweetling?" "I'm having my lesson, mother," Sansa said, and Marjorie almost chuckled at the look on Catelyn's face. "Lesson out here? What lessons can you do out here?" "My knife lessons," Sansa said, turning away and taking out the small training knife from the rack. The training swords and armor were kept on. Truth be told, that wasn't even what they'd come out here for. More, they were going to learn about the plants and flowers, about the use of them and how certain ones could be used for tea or for headaches and other aches. But Sansa, upon seeing her mother, couldn't resist the urge to annoy her, and Marjorie found herself liking her friend even more for it. "You're being taught to use a blade," Catelyn asked, her face crumpled up as she frowned. "She is Lady Catelyn, just as I have been." "You've been taught to use a blade?" Catelyn said, her voice scandalized. "I have, my lady." "But you are a lady. It's not ladylike to learn such a thing." "Jon thinks it's very ladylike, doesn't he?" "Marjorie," Sansa said, and she could have hugged the girl for the look that then appeared on her mother's face. "He does indeed, Sansa. He's so considerate that way," she said, and put even more effect in her voice, over-dramatizing her swoon some as she spoke. They both waited until Lady Catelyn stormed off, eager no doubt to give her mother or father a piece of her mind. God's help the woman if she tried to do so to her grandmother. As soon as she was out of sight, both she and Sansa turned to each other and broke out in laughter. Both of them soon standing there with tears running from their eyes as they had laughed so much. "That was so fun. You are mean when you want to be," she said, and Sansa giggled after calming some. She shouldn't have said what she did about Jon. No, she should not. "Come, let's go to our real lessons," Sansa said, and she nodded. She knew Sansa would need to speak to her mother properly soon. Had she not have been with her, had Sansa not have knocked her off her intent, then the conversation would already have taken place. But she also knew Sansa was as upset as she was with what her mother had said. More so perhaps in that it was in front of her she had done so. Sansa would defend Jon to anyone, even her mother, and had she not been there at the time, then she would have been much more upfront to her mother about her annoyance. But with her there, she had deferred, kept it to herself, waited, and shown her displeasure. Another way, and she was glad to see her friend was growing some. It was a day or two later, though, that things went from bad to worse, when her own world came crashing down. "Have you spoken to your mother yet?" she asked, and Sansa shook her head. "I will today." "Are you still angry with her?" "Very. She is your mother, though. It's not good to let it fester," she said, and Sansa nodded. Later that day, she saw Sansa and her mother go off into one of the gardens, and so she went to speak to her grandmother, finding her in her solar as usual. "Sansa is speaking to her mother," she said, and her grandmother nodded. "I heard you two pulled a little prank on the woman. She deserved it." "She did. Your idea?" "Sansa's," she said, and her grandmother chuckled. "The little wolf's grown some fangs, it would seem. She loves her brother, grandmother, above all." "Even her mother?" her grandmother asked. "I don't know, but she'd not allow Jon speak ill of Lady Catelyn, not that he would, so she'll not have it the other way, either. True enough, she'll need to be told the truth soon." "I know, Jon wished to do it already, but I talked him out of it," she said, and her grandmother smiled at her. "Why?" "She wasn't ready yet. She will be, though. Very soon," she said. She was drinking tea with her grandmother when the knock came to the door, her father entering with her mother, both of them looking upset. It took her a moment to notice, but when she saw her mother's tears, She jumped from the seat, running to her. Mother, what is it? What's wrong? She asked as her mother grabbed her and held her close. From Casterly Rock, Mother, she heard her father say, and then a moment later she heard the gasp from her grandmother and turned to look at her. It can't be, her grandmother said, and she'd never seen that look on her face before. Grandmother, what is it? Loras? Is it Loras? Is he hurt? It's not Loras, Marge. It's Jon. Jon. He's been killed, her mother said, and she turned to look from one to the other, her grandmother's own look confirming what her mother said. No, it can't be. It's wrong. It can't be. Please, grandmother, it can't be. She said, her eyes darting to each of them, her tears falling as she screamed and fell to her knees. Time drifted after that. She'd been given some milk of the poppy to help her sleep. She'd been carried to her room. She never even got to see Sansa or her mother. Instead, she woke up one night to find Fang laying on her bed, the wolf looking to her face. She reached out, rubbing its fur, and watched as it began to nudge the picture she held in her other hand, looking into her eyes before nudging it again. Fang, what is it? She asked, and the wolf licked her face before nudging the picture again. Fang, she said, and the wolf shook its head. She moved closer to the wolf, watched as it licked her hand and nudged the picture once more. She looked into its eyes and saw it stare at her. Jon? She said, and the wolf nodded, licking her face. Oh, Jon, I'm so sorry, I miss you so much, she said, hugging Fang as the wolf licked her face and shook its head. His head, Fang's or Jon's, she couldn't tell which. I don't understand. Are you Jon? She asked, as she let go of the wolf, and then Fang nodded again. Will you always be Jon? And the wolf shook her head. Are you stuck here? And the wolf shook its head. Are you alive? She asked, her last question full of hope. The wolf moved closer, licked her face once again, and nodded, and she looked at him. They said you were dead, and once again the wolf shook its head. You're alive. You're safe. For true? She asked. And the nod the wolf gave her made her laugh out loud. Casterly Rock, 2094 AC. Jon. Laying down in the back of the cart, the blood pouch dripping down his back into his small clothes, he felt a fool, though given the other fool was laying across for him, not a lonely one. Once the cart was brought into the rock itself, once he was in among people they could trust, he sat up and Arthur nodded to Bronn to do likewise. He headed straight to speak to Jaime, Arthur, Loras, and Ghost, walking with him, while Bronn was taken to his own room by Jorahs. What did it look like? He asked Arthur as the lift began to move. I'd have thought it true if I saw it. Seeing the blood, I almost did. Loras? What? Lorziad, before realizing he was actually being asked something. What did you think? I'm just glad it was a mummery. That was not something I enjoyed. Lorziar said, and he nodded sympathetically. Aye, Ghost, you did well, he said, rubbing Ghost's back when the wolf moved closer to him. Well, that damn wolf is the best mummer of all of us. I really thought he'd eaten Bronn. Arthur chuckled, as did he and Loras, while Ghost just stood there proudly. Do you want to be a part of this? He asked Loras, who nodded. After getting out of the lift, they headed for Jaime's solar, finding him alone and relieved to see them. Jon sat down while Jurian and Janna were sent for, and once they arrived, he looked to Jaime and began, The word will reach the realm over the next few days that I've been killed. I've sent word to those who need to know that this is a mummery, but to the rest, it'll seem that the assassination worked. In a few days, we'll send the word out that it didn't, but I want them to think they succeeded first. Why? Janna asked. I want them to celebrate. I want them to be seen to celebrate. They'll show themselves without thinking of it, both with how they react to the news of my death and to news they failed. He said, and Jerion smirked when he looked at him. This was the Tullys. Aye, and Baelish. We should let the realm know the truth. Let it out there and see them dealt with. Janna said. We should just fucking kill them, Jerion said. I've thought of both of those, and worse. Reignitz actually wanted me to burn Riverrun to the ground, he said, a fond smile on his face as he thought of his sister's anger and worry for him. But what? Jaime said, and he looked at him. She's my sister's mother, my brother's mother. I can't, he said, and Jaina looked at him before speaking. That leaves Baelish and Edmure. We have plenty of time to deal with them both. Edmure is Lord of the Riverlands. For now it suits us, he's Lord of the Riverlands. His bannermen won't come to him. They won't answer his call. You're thinking of the war? Jurian asked. I'm thinking of everything, Jurian. If there is a war, if there isn't. I'm trying to think of all the possibilities. But if there is a war, do we want a competent man in the Riverlands? A man they may show loyalty to? No, Jaime said, but Baelish is a known enemy. We can watch and predict his moves. If it were someone else there, then it's the same as the Riverlands. Baelish we can deal with at the right time. It's too risky, Jon. They've tried twice to kill you, Jenna said. If Robert found out the truth of me, he'd try to kill me. My aunt has faced assassins for years, and she was alone with no one to guard her. I have Seer and Arthur, I have Walder and Jors, I have Ghost and Dragons, and Casterly Rock, I have you all. And yet they still almost got to you, Jaime said. Almost. We could kill them all, my lord, each of them fallen, and then think I'm safe, only to find a threat from another source, or to by our actions make things harder for us, more dangerous. This is controlled danger. I think it worth the risk. But if you all think it not, and I'll go with your feelings on this. He's right, Jaime. No one wants to see the Tullys suffer more than me, but he's right, Garion said. I disagree. I'm sorry, Jon, but I think it's too risky. Genna said, shaking her head. Loras he asked, and Loras too shook his head. I'm with Genna, sorry, Jon, he said, and he couldn't help but smile at Loras for his concern. I'm against leaving any threat out there undealt with, Jon. I vote we deal with them now, Arthur said. Jaime, this is what you think is for the best. It is, Jaime, he nodded. Then I vote with you, Jaime said. He smiled at him then, glad of the support. That and the fact of the matter was that he still had no idea what to do about Catelyn Tully. Joy, he said, then before they could begin to argue amongst themselves. It's time I told her the truth, of me, of the dragons, he said, and saw Jerian look to him. She's too young, Jon, Jerian said, and Jaina shook her head. No, she's not. She's clever enough. She should know, and if you wait any longer, she may not accept it. But I thought you'd want to tell your sister first, Jaina said. Joy's my sister, he said, and Garion looked at him proudly. I'll bring her with me on the morrow. He went to speak to Jardine when they were done telling him to send the ravens to let the realm know of the attack and its success. When he told the man that people would perhaps blame him for being wrong, he just laughed. He cared not what others thought of him as long as they were happy with his service. Jon spoke to him a little on Marwyn and a little more on his granduncle, finding the man to be most eager to speak to Aemon if he ever got the chance. When he told Rhaenys that night of his plans, both she and Rhaegar didn't seem happy, the dragons wishing to see the people who had plotted his death to face their own. He explained it to them both, and eventually they agreed, reluctantly. When he then told her of his plans involving Joy, she seemed more than eager to meet the girl he considered to be a sister also. After breaking his fast and preparing winter and apples, he went looking for her and found Joy, getting ready for her lesson. He whispered to Ashaw his plans, and when she agreed, he walked over to Joy. Want to go for a ride, Joy? No ride, Jon. Lessons, Joy said, and made an annoyed face, and let out a soft sigh which he knew to be just for show. I've spoken to Leader. We can go riding. Joy, no lessons today, he said, and she looked from him to Ashera and back, checking to see if he was playing her false. No lessons, she said, her eyebrow raised, and he bit his cheek to stop from laughing. No lessons, unless you prefer to stay here and not come for a ride with me. No ride, Apples, see you a race, he said, grabbing his hand and heading for the door. And a few moments later, they were taking the lift down to the bottom. Arthur and Jose went riding with them. Walder had stayed back, and Bronn was going to help him with the sparring today. Were it not for what he needed to do, Jon would have loved to watch the confused looks on everyone's faces. Instead, though, he and Joy rode as fast as they could, both of them easily outpacing the others. Apples was perhaps too big for Joy now. The horse had grown far more than he'd expected, but Joy rode her horse the same as he did Winter, and Jon never feared for her in the saddle. When they reached the stream, he grabbed the pack with the pie and the pouch with the water he'd brought. It wasn't really a picnic, but more something for Joy to eat should she be hungry. Joy, you know what happened yesterday. What that man tried to do, he tried to hurt you, Joy said angrily, and she was so like Rhaenys in how she said it that he chuckled. He did, but he wasn't able to. Good, she said, looking at him, almost checking to make sure he really was uninjured. The thing is, Joy, he may not be the only one who wishes to harm me. Why, who wants to harm you? Tell me, she said, her little hands balled into fists. Come here, he said, and lifted her up and had her sit closer to him. My name is not Jon Snow, Joy. It's Jacaerys Targaryen, and there are people who, if they found out, would want to hurt me, like they did my family, he said, and she looked to him. Her brow creased. You are not Jon? I am always Jon. To you I will always be Jon. But I'm Jacaerys too, and one day I will take back the throne that was taken from my family, he said, and she smirked. You will be the king? Aye. Good, then I can be a real princess, she said with a giggle. You are a princess, my princess, always. Always? Always, he said determinedly, and she threw her arms around him. He told her then that no one could know until he was older, until he was ready, and then he told her about the dragons, and she looked at him, shook her head, and said no. There are no such things as dragons, Jon, she said as if she was stating a fact. You wish to meet them? He said, and the look on her face changed from certainty to disbelief, and then to excitement. Now? She asked, and he nodded. Let's go, she said, jumping up and practically dragging him to the horses. They rode back to the rock, and he took her down into the vaults, Joy holding his hand all the way. When he got to his room, Sorella opened the door, and Joy looked almost ready to run away when she first saw Rhaenys and Lageron. They won't hurt you, Joy. They'd never hurt my princess, he said, and led her over to Rhaenys, who allowed her to stroke her back. Joy looked on in awe as the dragons allowed her to touch them. Even more so a few moments later, when he, Surael, and Arthur carried them out to the beach, and they flew through the air. Joy standing there, clapping her hands excitedly, when Rhaenys let her flames out. That night, as he began to read her story to her, she reached out with her hand, taking his and asking to hear more of dragons, and he told her of Meraxes and Caraxes, of Balerion and Silverwing. When will they be big like them, Jon? Soon. Why? Because if the dragons are big, then no one can hurt you, she said, and he leaned in and kissed her on the forehead. He stayed there watching her as she drifted off to sleep before tucking her in. More as he got ready to leave, hearing her voice as he reached the door. Love you, Jon. Love you, princess, he said back. His sleep that night was disturbed, though. He felt sadness, great sadness, and woke up to find Ghost leaning on the bed, looking at him with a look which worried him greatly. Closing his eyes, he went looking, finding the door open. As always, the feeling came to him then. Sister, little sister, sadness, tears, crying, all of it coming to him, and he knew what had happened. Jaxie, what's wrong? Rosier said as he woke her when he went looking for the glass candles. I think the letter hasn't arrived in Highgarden. I think Sansa and Margaery think the worst, he said, grabbing the four of them and laying them on the table. It took him some time before he found what he was looking for. The images random and ever-changing before he finally saw her. Margaery was crying, laying in bed, the drawing in her hand, and he found the image disappearing far too quickly. He had messed up. He had messed up badly. In trying to play the game, he'd hurt her. Sansa, too. He'd been a fool. Jay, what are you going to do? Rhaenys asked, and he couldn't think. A raven would take days to get there now. They'd need to wait until the one they'd sent had rested and returned and then rested again. Father, the wolf, Rhaegar said, and he looked to his son to see what he meant. I don't understand. Use Ghost, Father, his connection to Fang. Could it be done? Could he use Ghost to warg into Fang? Would she allow him? Dusk had never allowed him, the door there, firmly shut. Even the mother wolf had not. She'd listened but had never allowed him to open the door. Would Fang look to Ghost, who was soon licking his hand, and the wolf looked to him, closing his eyes. He tried, and after a while he found the door unlocked, though it was clear he was but a guest, and this was not a permanent invitation. Sunspear 2094 AC. Tyrion. He stepped nervously from the ship, seeing Arianne and the guard standing there, ready to welcome them, the princess giving him a quick look and a smile which he returned. The ride to the old palace was spent in silence, though it was clear by the princess's face something had happened which she wished to speak to them on. Arriving and being led to the small solar, they quickly learned what it was that had concerned her so. We received a raven when you were gone, Uncle. A strange raven, though, only more so because of what happened later, she said. And Oberyn looked at her. This raven, what did it say? It informed the realm that Jon Snow was attacked and killed in Lannisport, she said. And he and Illyria gasped while Oberyn shouted, only to be calmed a moment later. It was a mummery, Uncle. Jon Snow is alive and well, Arianne said. And the relief on Oberyn's face lasted only momentarily before the anger replaced it. Why would you say such a thing? Why would you speak to me of such a thing? Oberyn said angrily. Why is this Jon Snow so important? Niemantyane refused to tell me, and they too reacted how you did. What is going on that I don't know? Arianne said, her own voice raised. He took a seat as Oberyn explained things. Hearing him say the story in one sitting, he found himself amazed. It could be whittled down to so little, but Oberyn gave only the basic essence of things, the facts, before he ever delved into the feelings of things. "And we are to support this boy?" Arianne asked, though she was not dismissive, more curious. "This boy is your cousin Arianne. Elia named him her son. He is our blood. My sister's own words called him so. Blood of my blood. He has given Dorne justice for Elia, for Egon, for Rhaenys. He saved my life, and he brought my niece back to me." Oberyn said, and Arianne looked at him. "As a dragon?" she asked, and this time she was dismissive. "I have been in her presence, as has Tyrion." "Tell her, Tyrion. Is she a dragon or a girl?" Oberyn asked. "Both, I believe. There is no doubt that Rhaenys is Rhaenys. They are one and the same. How it is possible, I know not. But then most of what Jon does is hard to explain," he said, a smile on his face. "Most of what he does, Lord Tyrion. Jon has gifts, Princess. Things he can do that no one else is able. He is a warg. He birthed dragons. He made the glass candles burn once again. There is magic in him, be it because he's the blood of the wolf, or dragon, or both. The Song of Ice and Fire," Oberyn said, and Arianne looked at them both, still not convinced. "He means to take the throne. Is he capable of such a thing?" she asked, and Oberyn laughed. "With his dragons alone, but he is not alone. He has my spear, and he will have Dorne's too." Oberyn said, "He has my family's full support as well as his uncles and the Tyrells. He will be king. That much is certain," Tyrion said. "Not if someone kills him first. This mummery uncle, I do not understand it. It vexes me," Arianne said, and he couldn't agree more. Nor could Oberyn. "Me too, niece. I shall ride to Dorne and return on the morn. Tyrion, I shall be sailing back with you. I need to speak to Jon myself." "I welcome your company, Oberyn, as always," he said with a genuine smile. "Then we shall have a small feast tonight. Nothing too extravagant, just enough to keep our hunger at bay," Arianne said, looking directly at him and making him feel the tightness of his breeches when she licked her lips. The meal was over quickly, the drinking lasting a little longer. Obater and her sisters were busy elsewhere arguing over who, if any, would get to accompany Oberyn when they sailed. When Arianne turned to him and passed him the note he feared it would be a rejection, a way to quietly say they could not meet again, he waited until he felt he was not being watched and opened it, his heart racing as he read the words. "My room tonight. I wish to hear my lion roar." The rest of the night seemed to stretch on and on. Finally, though, Arianne excused herself, and then, after waiting for what he hoped was a long enough time so that no one would notice, he did the same. Though, given how Hilaria smiled at him, he was obviously far less subtle than he had hoped. He made his way to her room, finding her guards all too eager to bid him enter, and then inside the room he found the princess, already undressed. He looked at her and felt himself rise. "Come to me, my lion, or are you not hungry?" she said as she pulled the sheets down to show off her body to its fullest. As dawn broke the next morning, he pulled himself from the bed and dressed, Arianne smiling at him all the while. "Never let anyone speak down to you for your height, Tyrion, for you have the appetite and stamina of a giant," she said, and he chuckled as he moved close to kiss her. "Maybe I was just inspired by a beautiful princess." "Of course you were," she said, and they both laughed. "I think we will leave today," he said, and while it saddened him, it felt good to see her own smile falter when he spoke. "What is Casterly Rock like?" she asked, surprising him. "It's hard to explain. It's much different than here. Perhaps you could come visit one day." "You would welcome me to your home?" she asked playfully. "I'm sure I would show you all its delights," he said as he kissed her once again. "I will come to see you. You have my promise on it. My lion, I will wait. You have mine, my princess," he said. "Love is a strange thing, my lord," Lamora said. "Maester, have you ever heard tell of Shira Seastar?" "The sorceress," he said, and Lamora laughed. "My former friends at the Citadel would love to hear her called as such. Magic cannot be real after all. But yes, that's the woman I speak of. I've heard some Maester why. She was the most beautiful woman in the Seven Kingdoms, my lord. Men fought for her, over her, to be with her. Brimden Rivers and Aegor Bittersteel brought a realm to its knees because of their love for her." "What does this go to do with me?" he asked, confused. "Do you know what people said was her most beautiful feature?" "No." "Her eyes, my lord. Her eyes were mismatched, something that others consider a defect. A slight, yet she inspired both great and terrible love. Lomira said, looking into his own and smiling before walking away, leaving Tyrion looking at his retreating from in confusion. Highgarden 2094 AC. Sansa. She knew she couldn't ignore her for long, though she tried her best to do so. She had even enjoyed the look on her mother's face when she and Margaery had told her of their training, and that it was Jon's suggestion. Hearing her mother call her brother that word. Hearing her say it here in front of Olenna, Margaery, and herself. Sansa had never been so angry. So she had enjoyed the look of annoyance on her mother's face, had enjoyed hearing from Willis later on how she had gone to complain to his father, and she had been surprised that Lord Mace had refused to stop the training. Ignoring her mother, though, was not a long-term plan. They needed to speak, and so she had taken Margaery's advice and went for a walk with her mother through the gardens, finding a secluded place to talk. "You should not have spoken of Jon that way, Mother. He is my brother," Sansa said, almost as soon as they sat down. "Half-brother," her mother said. "Jon has been more of a brother to me than Robb has. Were it not for him, Robb and I would still not be friendly," she said, and her mother shook his head. "You don't understand, Sansa. You don't understand what he's like, what he's truly like. Jon is kind, he's caring, he has helped me, he listens to me, asks me what it is I wish to do, he makes time for me. That's what I know, Mother. I've seen it with Loras, with Garland and Willis. I've seen how they act with Margaery. That's what a brother does, and I'd not trade Jon for any of them." "He's tricking you, Sansa, luring you and the others in. It's part of his plan," her mother said, and she looked at her dumbfoundedly. "His plan? To take Winterfell from Robb," her mother said, and Sansa laughed. She actually laughed at her mother. "Jon doesn't want Winterfell. He loves us, Mother, me, Arya, Bran. Even Robb. It was Jon who spoke to him, Jon who arranged our fostering, and you think it a plan to take our home from us? You cannot see it. He's tricked you all. What of what he did in King's Landing, what he did to your uncle? Given what Uncle Edmure said and did, I'd say he got off easy." "Mother," Sansa said, and her mother gasped. Olenna had explained, and Margaery confirmed what had happened in King's Landing, that Edmure had tried to take Jon's hand. A lord trying to take a boy's hand. It shook her to her core, even if Edmure had the right of it, and she knew Jon far too well to believe that. He was a child, and to punish him her uncle wished to take his hand. "How can you say that? Did Uncle Edmure try to take his hand, Mother? Did he bring him up on charges that would have resulted in him losing his hand?" she said, her anger clear. "He attacked him," her mother said, and she looked at her in disbelief. "So, if I pushed you, you'd seek my hand?" she asked, and her mother shook her head. "No, but you're true-born. You're not a... Don't you say that word." "I mean it, Mother. Don't you ever say that word in front of me again. He is my brother. You'll refer to him as such." "My sweet girl, my poor sweet girl, what has he done to you? What have they done to you?" "They?" she asked, confused. "The Tyrells, they wish to marry the prince to Lady Margaery. They're filling your head with lies, with false lessons. You should not be in this place. This is not what I wished for you. I know. You wish me to go to River Run, where there are no children of my age. It was my brother who wished me to come here. My brother who knew I'd love it here, who cared enough about me to know what it was I would wish for," she said, and her mother shook her head again. "The Tyrells, they must be in on it too. That son of theirs, that Loras. He is friends with the Bass boy," she said, when Sansa glared at her. "That, and they wish to marry you to that cripple rather than the prince, all to make their daughter queen, and so the bastard can take Winterfell," her mother said, and Sansa rose to her feet. "How dare you? Willis is not a cripple, and I told you never to call Jon that word. You should leave, Mother. You should go. We have nothing to speak of, and Father wishes me to be here as much as I do," she said angrily, and ran away, leaving her mother there. "Sansa! Sansa!" her mother called after her as she ran. The voice becoming quieter and quieter as she ran further away, Fang running behind her. She stopped and fell down into the grass and cried, her arms around the wolf. How could she think like that? How could she believe that of Jon, of Willis? How long she lay there she didn't know, but when she heard the sound of the cane in the distance, she did her best to fix her face, to wipe away the evidence of her crying. "Sansa, Sansa, you need to come. There's been some terrible news," Willa said, and she looked to him, surprised to see the upset in his face. "What is it? What's happened?" "It's Jon, Sansa. Something terrible has happened to Jon." She lay crying in the bed later that day. Olenna and Willis, Ellery, even Garland had come to see if she was all right. All but Margaery and Sansa knew that of all of them, it was her friend who felt as she did. Her mother came in and rubbed her back, held her hair back and combed it, wiped her eyes, and she hugged her tight. Sansa found, despite the day, she was glad for it, glad for the comfort, glad she was here to hold her and sing her to sleep. The wolf looked at the crying girl, looked on as she slept. She was her. They were one, and her 2-foot was in pain. She knew the reason why. The other 2-foot, the one who belonged with her quiet brother, he had been hurt. He was gone, and her 2-foot grieved for him. The other 2-foot too felt as bad. The brown-haired one who smelt of the gardens, who smelt of the flowers. But the other one did not. She felt no sadness, felt no grief, and when her 2-foot slept, she smiled. She laughed. She was happy. She looked at her as she moved around the room, saw the way she almost bounced on her feet, and she reached out for her 2-foot, reached out to wake her, to let her see, to show her the truth. She growled at the other 2-foot, bared her teeth, and waited for her to speak, to move. Get away, you cursed thing. Yours should not be here, you filthy beast. I regret the day the bastard ever brought you to my home. Maybe now he's finally gone. I can get rid of you too. See you gone, see you dead, just like him. Catelyn said, and Sansa looked at her in horror. Mother? She said, and saw the look on her mother's face. The look of shame, not at what she had said, but that she had been caught. Get out! Sansa, get out and don't ever come back. I never want to see you again. I never want to hear from you again. Go. Sansa. She jumped from the bed and raced through the halls, Fang running off in the other direction, reaching Lady Olenna's rooms. She saw one of the giant guards at the door, his face for once not stoic as he looked at her concernedly. As he saw the tears fall from her eyes, I need to speak to Lady Olenna, please. I need to speak to her now, she said, and the guard knocked and then opened the door, allowing her inside. Olenna sat by the fire looking far older than she usually did, a glass of wine laying untouched on the table beside her. Sansa, what is it, child? The woman asked, worriedly, when she saw her. My mother, I want her gone. Please send her away. Send her away, she said. And Olenna hugged her and held her tight. I will, sweetling, I will. The realm reacts. White Harbor, 2094 AC. Wyman was sitting in the hall, holding court when Richard's man arrived. Mara, it seemed, was the main runner of the group. He coordinated the messages, while Para and Wallis took care of other duties. He nodded to the man, and after holding court for some more time, he turned to Robb and Wendell and told them to carry on from here. Robb looking excited to spend more time listening to the petitions. Giving the signal to his guards, he walked to his solar and was joined by Marisol a few moments later, the man handing him the letter, which he smiled to see was from his king. He quickly broke the plan seal, looking forward to the day it would come with the 3-headed dragon, one instead, and opened and read the letter. Lord Wyman, you will soon receive a raven informing the realm of my demise at the hands of an assassin. I assure you all is well and ask you to keep an eye on how quickly a raven is sent once you're informed. I would suggest you keep your correspondence down and your eyes on the rookery. In a few days, another will arrive announcing my recovery and explaining the mistake. You should watch the rookery again after it's done, so. Your friend, Jon? He smiled at the simply signature, his king calling him a friend, making him proud. Burning the letter, he bid his farewells to Morel and later that night called Wendell and Willis to his solar to speak. Why a mummery, father? Willis asked. It seems Jon wishes to smoke out some of his enemies, son. Should we not play our own part? Wendell asked. How so? He asked curiously. What if we make word of the raven public, then wait a day or two until the other arrives? Wendell said, and he looked at his son, pleased with the idea. Lord Robb, the girls, Willis asked, will be overjoyed by the news of Jon's recovery, he said, and wisely nodded. The raven came, and the news had most of White Harbor mourning Jon's loss. His guards brought him back news of toasts to the White Wolf, and Wyman put the coin aside for the celebration to come at the news of his survival. Robb took it as badly as his son had feared. Wymanfred was more concerned for him than for her own grief, and he was proud of how she comforted him. Just as Jon predicated the raven was sent on the night of the news, and Wyman knew his own maester was not to be trusted, to make certain, he placed a guard to watch the rookery the night the other raven came. While they feasted, while White Harbor rejoiced, while Robb smiled for the first time in days, a guard watched on as yet another raven flew. Bear Island 2924 AC. Jira. He was rocking Geralt in the crib when Linnes and Meigs brought the letter, his wife taking over as he read it himself. "You've read this?" he asked them both. "Aye, what do you think of the Meister?" Maeggy asked, and he shook his head. "Ertus is a good man, Maeggy. I doubt he's part of any grand conspiracy," he said, and Linnes nodded in agreement. "We still must know," Max said, and he agreed. Maeggy herself took watch the day the Raven arrived. Bear Island mourned the boy who'd done so much for them, and while they held a somber meal that night, Maeggy and Lyanna watched, his youngest cousin refusing to sleep while her mother was upset, and Jorah and her sisters being unable to dissuade her. "Well," he asked the next morning. "Not a raven left," Meg said, and he smiled at that. They held a feast when the second one came, the spirits lifted by the news and talk of incompetent masters and japes at the expense of the Lannister men who were staying on Bear Island. Once again, the master was watched, though this time by Lyra and Jory, as Mekis needed to be seen celebrating. And once again, no raven was sent, and Jorah was proud of his master's loyalty. Winterfell 2094 AC. Ned. When Luwin came rushing into his solar, he had thought the scroll in his hand was from Robert, and he worried as to what it would contain. Writing to tell him he had lost a hostage, that Theon Greyjoy, a boy of 5 and 10, had managed to escape, had been one of the hardest things he had ever had to do. Yet there was no reply, no reproach, no demands, nothing. And while relieved, he still worried what Robert's reaction would be. The Raven, though, wasn't from King's Landing, nor was it from River Run. Which annoyed him too. Instead, though, it was from Casterly Rock, and he broke the seal and read it. Shaking his head as he did so, handing the Raven to Lolwyn, he watched as the Maester read it. His own expression, as confused as his, was, "A mummery, my lord?" Luwin asked. "Aye, it would seem so, though why Jon or Lord Jaime feel the need to do so is beyond me. Perhaps it's to flush out those responsible," Luwin said, and he looked to the man. "How would this do that?" "I do not know, my lord, but perhaps that is the reason. That he feels the need to do such a thing worries me," Ned said, and Luwin nodded. He found it hard to sleep that night, though it was thoughts of Jon and not Cat which kept him awake. Taking a walk, he went to the crypts and paid his respects. Spending time in front of Lyanna's statue, he said a small prayer to her, asking her to look after Jon and keep him safe. Though he knew there was no need for such, as Lyanna would no doubt be already doing so. Breaking his fast the next morning, he laughed at Elle and the children, as Arya tried to get Elle to call of today's indoor lessons since it was such a nice day, and with the lack of wind, surely a day to shoot arrows, Elle having none of it, and only saying if Arya and Bran did well in their lessons, they could, as a reward, leave early for archery practice. "My lord, a man at the gate says he's from Riverrun." Balin said, and he got up, kissed his children, and told them to behave for Elle, and he and Laye walked to the south gate. "Brynden?" he said when he saw the man on the horse. Eddard the Blackfish said as he dismounted, and Ned looked around to see if Cat was with him. "It's good to see you again, but what brings you north?" he asked as Brynden looked to see his guards take his horse to be stabled. "I wish to see my grandnephew Eddard, to see the north too while I'm at it." "Well, I welcome you to Winterfell. I'll see quarters and a warm bath are made available. Have you eaten?" "Not since last night." "Come then, we were just breaking our fast. I'm sure you'll appreciate something warm." "Aye, that and a drink wouldn't go amiss." "I'm sure we can see to that," he said with a chuckle which Brynden matched. King's Landing 2094 AC. Jon Arryn. When Pycelle brought him the Raven, he almost did a dance. Had he been alone, he may very well have. Instead, he called for both Rosie and Pycelle, one to share the news with, and one to find out what the realm whispered of the event. When they arrived, he told them what had happened, but briefly, and sent Rosie off to do his job, something the man wasn't doing well in his opinion. "A drink Pediar. A celebration is called for, is it not?" "It is, my lord. It's good to finally see the Lannisters receive a setback, and all it cost was the life of a bastard." "A bastard who never knew his rightful place," he said, and Pater nodded as they drank the wine. "No doubt his grace will mourn the boy's passing." Pater said he found himself agreeing. It's perhaps a good thing his plans for Theon Greyjoy's escape will be put on hold, hopefully for good now. He really planned to sail the fleet to Pike. Payer asked. "He did. Can you imagine the cost of such a thing? All for a boy that Ned shouldn't have been fool enough to lose in the first place." "And Ned Stark?" Payer asked. "What of him?" "He did lose a hostage of the crown, my lord." "He did, but while Robert may rant and rave over the stupidity of it, he'll not do anything about it." "Should he not be punished, my lord?" Padir asked. "How?" "A fine, perhaps. Some coin would be welcome even with our new friend. How much? Nothing too serious, my lord. 50,000 gold dragons. Robert would never go for that. Besides, the north is far too poor to afford it. Not anymore. The Manderleys, even the Mormonts now, are rising high. I'll consider it, but it will be hard to persuade Robert to punish his friend. It's just an idea, my lord, Pitier said. He thought on it more during the day and then went to Robert to tell him of the news. The king reacting just as he had expected. I want this man found and executed. If he acted with anyone, I want them found, too. He was a good lad, a fine lad, a raven. Send a raven to Ned. Send him my sympathies. Tell him we'll find the man responsible. Robert said, his voice surprisingly sobering up as he spoke. What of Greyjoy, your grace? Who gives a fuck about the damn Ironborn, Ned's boy? Somebody killed Ned's boy. Find them, Jon. That's a fucking order. You find them. I will, your grace. He strolled back to the Tower of the Hand, whistling as he did so. Good news was so rare these days, he thought, as he sat down and poured himself another glass of wine. Baristan. The note from Villar had been clear. He was to go to the tavern and meet with one of Richard's men, and so he did, though the man took an age to get there. When he did, Baristan was taken to the room, and the man began to speak, telling him things which he couldn't believe. Why a mummery? He asked, and the man smiled. I believe to flush out those responsible. How? He asked. You'll see, some will celebrate, others will be sad. We just sit back and take note of which is which. You think more than one responsible. I do not know. I'm just one of the lips. Athsleen is the man who knows what to do with the whispers we bring him. You should have seen the boy move, seen him fight, one of a kind, I tell you. With a man like that at my side, by the gods, I'd have been proud to swing my hammer with Jon Snow. Poor Ned, to lose a son, I should be there for him. He should be here. Eventually, though, the drink and the whores took his attention away, and Robert was back doing what it was he did best. The Queen was probably the happiest he had seen her since her odd behavior with the king. Smiling, singing, friendly to servants. It was disturbing to see. He also found he heard talk in the streets, too. Small folk, people who Jon had helped, who Lady Margaery had helped, all sad to hear he'd fallen. Of course, this all changed when the second raven came, and Baristan had found he had enjoyed this one far more. Seeing the disgruntled looks on Barristan Aaron's face, the Queen's mood souring, even seeing Robert happy, though it was remarkably like him being sad. Truth be told, that boy, I knew he was too fast to be taken down. Have I told you of the squire's tourney in Lannisport? Robert said to yet another whore. Baristan just hoped the mummery was worth it, and that Jon and Richard had gotten what they needed. He thanked the gods once again that Arthur was there beside him and counted the days until he could join him. River Run 2094 AC. Reimagined. Being called to a feast to celebrate Edmure's naming as Lord Paramount was not his idea of fun. Knowing he'd have to go was not something he had looked forward to. But when Richard's man arrived telling him of the mummery, he knew he'd enjoy himself that much more. So now, as he sat there on day 2 of the feast, seeing Edmure sitting in his father's chair and looking even more lost than usual, he waited. Seeing the maester walk in, seeing the smile on Edmure's face, he knew he'd receive the raven, and he smirked inwardly while looking to see what Edmure would say or do. The floppy fish didn't disappoint. Instead of keeping the news to himself, instead of just reading it out, he reveled in it. He celebrated it, and Reimagined took note of the looks of disgust around the room. It seems, my lords, that the gods have seen fit to punish the bastard. Jon Snow is dead. This calls for a toast. Reimagined was among many who didn't raise their glasses, the Malisters and Mutons, the Blackwoods and the Brackens, and Lady Shella all keeping their glasses on the table. Lady Shella going so far as to stand up and berate those who had raised their glasses for such a toast. I was born and raised in the light of the Seven. I fear the gods, and so should all of you. To celebrate a boy's demise so and innocent in the eyes of the mother, it shames me to be in such company, she said, as she stormed from the room. Let the old cunt go back to her haunted castle, Edmure said, laughing, and Reimagined once again looked around the room. Richard's man had said it was a mummery his king wished to play, an act to make those who plotted against him stand out. But Reimagined could see it was more than that. While it was true that was no doubt part of it, he could tell his king had a different goal. Edmure Tully would not sit easily in the seat of his father, and in time Reimagined felt his king meant to reel the fish in, place him on the fire, and roast himself some trout. Dragons were hungry and needed to be fed after all. Highgarden 2094 AC. Olenna, seeing Sansa so distressed, took her mind off her own distress, off her own upset, her own anger and grief. She had a focus now, a way to channel what she felt, and a target to let loose on. She had Sansa brought back to her rooms, placed right at her door with orders she wasn't to be disturbed, and then went to check on Margaery, finding her asleep. She shooed the wolf from her granddaughter's door and sent her back to Sansa's room and called for Lady Catelyn to be brought to her solar on the morrow. The woman arrived bright and early, her face full of anger and scorn, and Olenna shrugged. The woman had no idea of how angry she was, nor how scornful she felt of her right now. Waiting until she sat, she poured some tea and offered Catelyn some, but she shook her head. Olenna felt herself in no mood for games, no desire to be circumspect, no desire to be pleasant, and so she was none of those things. You men have already been informed, and I've called you here to do so to you too. You are no longer welcome at Highgarden. At your daughter's request, yes, I am. What have you done to my daughter? Me, what have you done, my lady? Your daughter came to my room last night, extremely distressed. Care to tell me why? I do not answer to you, Lady Olenna. You do while you're under my roof. I have nothing to say to you. You think yourself so clever, but I can see your plans. You could not see my plans if I wrote them out and handed them to you myself. Lilla said, laughing. You wish to marry Margaery to Joffrey, marry Willis to Sansa, and help the bastard take Winterfell. I can see your plans clearly. Well, at least the last one is no more. The bastard has finally been put where he belongs. You are a hateful woman, Catelyn Tully. A hateful woman indeed. Now go. I have no wish to look at your hate-filled face any longer than I must. My name is Stark, Catelyn Stark. My husband is Warden of the North, my brother Lord Paramount of the Trident. And don't you forget it, you old witch, Catelyn said, standing up. Both Sansa and Jon taught me something, Trout. They taught me the meaning of pack, wolves are pack, fish are not. You are Tully as you've always been, and you and your brother are no longer welcome in the Reach. I shall take my daughter and leave, Catelyn said. And Olenna laughed. Your daughter is here at your husband's request. Only he can ask her to leave. If you wish to take her, you better bring an army, Lady Tully. Left, see to it that the fishwife here and her guards are off our lands by noon. You think I'll stand for this? One day my daughter will be queen, and then we'll see how strong you grow. Perhaps, but today I'm far stronger than you. So go, swim away, but do so quickly. I'd hate for Sansa to see her mother dragged from the keep. I'd hate for it, but I'd see it done, she said, standing up, and watched as Catelyn gulped. They were gone within the hour, and she found herself happier than she had been in a while. It had felt good for there to be no pretense, no courtesy given or received. Instead, she had gotten rid of the woman, and that made her feel far better than she had that morn. She walked to Sansa's room and told her that her mother was gone, told her it had not been pleasant, and Sansa had just nodded. She checked on Margaery over the course of the day, her granddaughter wishing no visitors, and Olenna felt her heart break for her sweet Rose. It would take her time to recover from the loss of Jon Snow. It would take them all time. Checking in on her that night before she went to bed, she found the wolf once again outside her granddaughter's door, and this time let her inside. Perhaps she could succeed where all others had failed. Grandmother, wake up. She opened her eyes to see her granddaughter and Sansa standing over her bed, both of them smiling. Margaery, Sansa, aye, wake up, grandmother. I've news to share. Great news. The best news, Jon. Jon is well, grandmother. Jon is alive and well, Margaery said, the smile on her face filling Olenna with more hope than she knew existed. You're certain? She asked, and both girls nodded, and Olenna found herself wide awake and eager to learn more. He actually rocked 2094 AC. Jenna, she had to admit, seeing Joy try to speak to Jon about the dragons while the little girl made sure no one could hear her was amusing to her. Watching as she whispered in Jon's ear as he whispered in hers, and then she looked around as if she'd learned yet another great secret had made her laugh more than once, Jon too, which the boy had needed. Such was his guilt and anger at himself for how Margaery and Sansa had felt. She was glad he'd been able to fix it, somewhat at least, though she knew he wouldn't rest until the Raven could be sent and the news could be confirmed through more normal means. When he had told her, and during what he did she'd been stunned. To be able to control an animal in that way was still difficult for her to understand. To do so to an animal that far away was frightening. What are you chuckling about, sister? Gurion said, sitting down beside her. Those two, look at them, she said as Joy was once again having something whispered in her ear. Did I tell you what she said to me? He asked, smiling. No. We were walking to her lesson, just the two of us, and she began questioning me, trying to find out if I knew. I swear Jaina, when she plays that game of hers, I don't know how she keeps it up, he said, and she laughed, imagining Joy's questions. When Billerine came running by, she picked the cat up and looked at it, saying, "You're a dragon, aren't you?" and then looking at me out of the corner of her eye. The little minx! I had to tell her I knew, that you and Jaime and Tyrion did, as did Loras and Cregan and Liara and Jon's guards. You didn't tell her? She asked, surprised. I think he was so relieved she accepted it that he didn't get around to it. She knows Brienne and the new boy. What's his name? Satin. Aye, him. She knows they don't know. She does, he said. And both of them looked at her and Jon as he began tickling her. Jai's laughter echoing around the room. They were almost finished breaking their fast when Jaime arrived, carrying a scroll in his hands. The ship's being spotted a little way out, Tyrion's home, he said, and she sighed. We need him to rest and be settled first. Am I to tell Jon? She said, and he nodded. She took her mind of what they needed to speak of with Tyrion, by making sure Joy went to her lesson and Brienne, Satin, and Cregan went to theirs. Jon and Loras would be joining Jaime for the day and heading to Lannisport to welcome Tyrion home. Once she left Joy with Liara, she then went to her own solar and began to read through her letters. There were some that responded to her request for fostering, which she had put off reading for now. Teachin would foster with Lord Brax, and so she had sent letters to find some boys to foster here with Walder, one from the Riverlands, a Blackwood, a young lad from House Payne and a lad from House Rackard along with her nephew Tyrak, she would agree to. Joy's fostering was harder, as it seemed even Joy being the future Lady of Castamere was not enough for some to forget Joy's birth. She had received a number of houses' apologies, and it annoyed her no end. How dare they look down upon her niece? She had though received some replies which she was glad of, some of which she was more than happy to accept. One from House Bracken and one from Emmond's house. Despite herself, she had asked for and gotten Walda to come to stay with her. The girl was kin after all, and White Walda, as they called her, deserved far better than growing up at the Twins. The others, though, had excused themselves. Most claimed other arrangements, and Jaina wasn't happy about it in the least. Still, there was time, and so she wrote a letter to Olenna, seeking someone from the Reach. She was just finishing when Jerian arrived, and was annoyed to find that she'd spent barely any time on the work she'd come to do, really. You can't hide away in here, you know. Who can? She said, and he chuckled. We have to be there for him. I understand the urge. I feel it too. A part of me just wishes to ride to Castamere and hide out there. Just leave it to others to deal with. But we can't. We already did that with Jon, and only that he understood we'd have harmed the boy far more than we almost did. We can't do that with Tyrion. I know, I'm scared, Jerian. God's help me, I'm scared. I'm scared of seeing him and breaking down. I'm scared how he'll react. I'm scared what it'll mean for us all, she said. And her brother got up and walked around her desk, kneeling down and taking her in his arms. Remember the night we scared Kevin, he said, and she shook her head. You, me, Taggett, we all snuck to his room in the dark. You don't remember? No. Taggett got the key and hid it so he couldn't lock his door. Remember how he was at night, how worried he was about ghosts, and how Father would allow him to lock his door, he said, and she nodded, a small smile on her face. Aye. So we snuck in, and it was dark and windy. One of those nights when the rock was louder than usual. We found him hiding under his covers, so Taggett and I grabbed his legs, and you said, laughing. I jumped into the bed beside him, screaming loudly all the while. She said, laughing too. Hey, that was scary, Jaina. This is nothing, he said, and she looked at him, nodded, and kissed him on his cheek before watching as he stood up. I'll see you later, he asked, and she nodded once again. He was right. They needed to be there for him, to put aside what they may be feeling. It wasn't about their hurt, their pain, their anger. It was about Tyrion. He needed to know he was her nephew. Jaime's brother, he needed to know that his family loved him, now and always. Lannisport 2094 AC. Oberyn. Seeing the docks come into view, he searched and was happy to see the White Wolf and his nephew standing beside it, happy to see him safe and well. Even after Arianne had shown him both of the Raven scrolls, even after Arianne had told him that should it be untrue, then Sorella would have sent him word. He's still worried. Seeing Jon standing there, he now really began to think about the reasons behind the mummery. about why Jon had felt the need to do such a thing. Watching Tyrion greet his brother, he smiled, as he did when Jon greeted him, and then, a moment later, when Tyrion yelped and tried to shoo the White Wolf away. Though for once Ghost was not trying to remove my breeches, as Tyrion had told him the wolf was wont to do. Instead, the wolf was licking his face and forcing Tyrion to chuckle. Jon greeted Ellaria first, and he was happy to see the easy way he did so. He hoped when he was king he ignored protocol as he did now, as he looked at Jon greeting Ellaria with a warm hug. "It is good to see you, Jon." Oberyn said far too many people watching for him to call him nephew. "You the Prince Oberyn," Jon said, and nodded to show him they'd speak in a moment. As they got into the carriage, he was happy they'd be going to Casterly Rock rather than the building they'd stayed in previously, feeling the urge to be closer to Jon and Sarella. He was happier still when Jon joined Ellaria and Tyrion in the carriage, Ghost following Arthur and Jorah as they led Jon's horse away. "What happened, Jon?" he asked, as soon as they left Lannisport itself. "Firstly, I want you to know I was always safe. Everything about the attempt we knew of. They even hired one of Richard's men to do the job," Jon said with a soft smile which wasn't as reassuring as the boy thought it was. "Who?" he asked, and both Tyrion and Ellaria looked on as eagerly as he did. "Catelyn Tully, Edmure Tully, and Patar Baelish," Jon said, and Ellaria gasped at the mention of Jon's aunt. "Your aunt was part of this?" Ellaria asked, her shock still clear in her voice. "I believe she was the key part," Jon said. He told them then of how Richard, on Olenna's advice, investigated the Tullys, finding out it was Edmure behind the attack in the Riverlands. Of how he then followed Catelyn to King's Landing, and then Jon told them of the hiring of Bronn. As he spoke, Oberyn was surprised both by how calmly he did so, and by how every so often he'd glance and then look away from Tyrion. "What steps have you taken against them?" Tyrion asked, and Jon looked to him, then away and then back to him, making Oberyn wonder if perhaps he had been wrong and his nephew wasn't calm at all. "None," he said. And Ellaria beat him to the punch, moving from her seat and sitting down beside Jon, her arms going around him and holding him tightly. He couldn't make out what she whispered in his ears, but he did see Jon nod a couple of times as she did so. "Jon, we need to act. You know this?" Tyrion asked, and Jon moved his head from Ellaria's shoulder. "We can speak on it later. Tell me of Essos." He began to tell him then of Illyrio, of Viserys, and the rumors of Daenerys. He was about to tell him more, but they had arrived at Casterly Rock, and so they left the carriage, and Jon moved to show them to their rooms. As they got out of the lift, he saw Tyrion's family waiting to see him, his aunt and uncle and cousins. He smirked, seeing Tyrion look warily at Balerion as he greeted them. "Father," he heard Cyrilla say, and looked to see her walking from where he knew Jon's room was. "Daughter, you look well. You are happy?" he asked, and she nodded before hugging him, and then Ellaria. Jon nodded to Tyrion and Jaime and the others before walking with Ellaria as Cyrilla and him to his room, asking them to step inside for a moment, the White Wolf guarding the door along with Arthur and Jorah. "Your own rooms are in the guest wing, or should you prefer you can stay in the vaults with us," Jon said as he looked around, surprised that Rhaenys and Rhaegar were not in sight. "The vaults? The dragons are too big, Uncle. They need room. Rhaenys, Rhaegar, they are much happier down there, and so we moved down with them," Jon said, and he turned to Ellaria, who nodded.
"Show us these vaults."
They took the lift down, and when Jon and Cyrilla led them through the vaults, he was surprised to see just how different the place was. It was brighter, cleaner. The rooms they brought them to would be perfect. Jon brought them then to his room, where Ramsitz chirped happily seeing him, and both he and Ellaria walked to her, while Jon spoke to Lygran. "Soon, son," he heard Jon say. After getting reacquainted with his daughter and niece, Jon asked him to walk with him to the beach, so leaving Ellaria with Cyrilla to catch up, he followed him, enjoying the walk and immediately seeing the benefits of living down here. For the dragons especially, though, for Jon too. "I know you have questions, Uncle. The anger you feel, I felt it too." He helped calm me. Jon said with a smile as Ghost ran through the sand ahead of them. "How?" "I'm a dragon and a wolf, and wolves stalk their prey, Uncle. They wait and pounce when the time is right. Like a viper in the sand," he said with a smile, and Jon nodded. "Edmure Tully is a fool. His men won't follow him, and so Robert can't count on their support. Baelish, we know all about Baelish. Richard told me that he's the father of Jon Arryn's child, that he's been sleeping with Lysa Tully for years, and that she's not the Tully he really wishes to sleep with." Jon said, and he looked at him in surprise. "Was there not some story of him and your uncle?" Uncle Brandon almost killed him, though it vexes me why he cared so much. Jon said, and he looked at him inquisitively. I do not understand. My uncle was in love with Ashar they married. Why would he care to fight Baelish over Catelyn Tully? Jon asked, clearly confused. The fight may not have meant the same to both men, perhaps for Littlefinger was for Catelyn. For Brandon, it may have been sheer annoyance, anger at being called out. Your uncle had temper, did he not? It got him killed, Jon said softly, and he caught the worried glance he gave him, felt the lump in his throat at his nephew's concern. I have learned to control mine own temper. Someone showed me how much I have to live for, he said, and Jon smiled. So, you plan to wait? He asked. Do you see Robert giving up the throne, Uncle? Do you see a way this happens without a war? No, war is inevitable, he said. Then should we not use all the tools we have, create dissension among our enemies, have them fight themselves, even while they fight us? He looked at the boy, his nephew, his sister's son by choice, blood of my blood. She had called him, and he saw it even more clearly now. Fire and ice may course through Jon's veins. But there was sand there, too. There was Martell in him. That much was clear. You are far too smart for your age, nephew, he said with a chuckle. I've had good teachers, he said, and they turned as Ghost came running up the beach, carrying a fish in his mouth. It's a pity that's not a trout. Oberyn said, and Jon laughed, as did he. They headed back into the vaults, and he told him even more about Illyrio and his uncle, Jon, getting angrier as he did so. Even more so when he spoke of the Magisters sending men after Daenerys. What is he up to, uncle? I do not know, Daenerys. You sent the hound to her. I did. I saw him protect her in a vision. He is doing so, none have gotten close to her. As for Viserys, I do not know. How well protected is he? Could we get to him? Jon asked. With planning, yes, but on his lands, we are at a disadvantage. I also think he will move your uncle from the manse, but we could try. I'll see if I can learn anything, see if the glass candles can help me. You can control them? He asked eagerly. I can see some of what happens or is happening now. It's hard to focus, but I can somewhat. If I really want to see something, I can see it, I think. We found the Maester. Lomara, maybe he knows more. Or perhaps it's time we speak to the mage. I'll talk to Lomara. What do you make of him, Uncle? I believe him loyal, nephew. Uncle, I need you to do something for me, Tyrion. I need you to be there for him. Can you do that? Jon asked, stopping him as they reached the vault doors. Tyrion is a friend. Both Illyrio and I are fond of him. He will meet us, he asked, and Jon nodded. Then we will be here for him. Winterfell 2094 AC. The Blackfish. After eating and bathing and watching his grandniece and nephew do surprisingly well at archery, Era especially, he spoke to Eddard only briefly before he was called away on lordly business. So he found himself walking the grounds of Winterfell and becoming more and more impressed with it as he did so. Unlike Riverrun, the Red Keep, Highgarden, or any of the southern keeps, this was far more to his liking. Winterfell was built for practicality, not show, for defense, not luxury. Watching the guards go about their business, the way each gate was guarded, the training drills which happened, all of it making him feel right at home. This was how a keep was supposed to be run. Be prepared for the worst, always, even if it never came to pass. Cedar Brynden, I wonder if you'd be up for a spar? The bushy-whiskered Cedar Roderick asked, and he nodded. Aye, that sounds like a grand idea. In the end, he sparred with Sir Sewell Roderick and his nephew Jory. With Alyn, Harwin, and Tomord, he beat them all. Sir Roderick giving him a fair go, and Jory coming closest to beating him. He chuckled at the claps which came after the last few spars, seeing both Arya and Bran looking on, his grandniece doing her best impression of his fighting style as she watched. The woman who grabbed the children and took them away was the new governess, a Lady Cerwyn, and was it any other man that Eddard Stark, he'd have thought it strange, this woman being her while Cat was not. He doubted there was anything untoward going on, and even the little voice in the back of his head saying he had fathered a bastard once was ignored. I tell you it's the fucking Southerners, the older guard said. Every day with you it's the Southerners, the younger guard said with a laugh. Aye, and every day I'm right, they hate us, they look down on us and don't want to see the North strong. That's why they tried to kill the lad. Aye, they tried to kill him in the Riverlands, and now in the West too. The West wouldn't want him dead, the younger guard said, dismissively. Did I say the fucking West? Clear your ears, you daft sod. The South. It's the South who wishes him dead, not the West. And certainly not the North. That lad's as true a Northman as I've ever seen. The White Wolf, the younger guard said with a smile. Aye, the White Wolf, may the old gods keep him safe. Brynden was stunned. It couldn't be, could it? Would they have gone against his wishes again? Would Edmure be that stupid? Would Cat? His nephew was an idiot. His return to Riverrun proved that to argue with him, to basically tell him to leave, showed that clearly. You did what, Uncle? I ordered the stocks replenished, the stores to be full, then began the work of putting this keep back to how it should be. Riverrun is supposed to be a fortress, nephew. You overstepped, Uncle. You are not Lord of Riverrun. I am. I was acting Lord. Perhaps you should act a damn Lord yourself. I am Lord. I thank you, Uncle, but you had no right to tell my men what to do, no right to spend the coin. No right? No right? I'll not see my home turned into a laughingstock. For fuck's sake, Edmure, the fucking phrase, could have taken this keep. I'll protect Riverrun. I'm Lord here, Uncle, not you. Perhaps it's time you went back to the Vale. I'll go. I'll not set foot in this place ever again. And when they come for you, Edmure, when the enemy is at the gate, you shout, you're Lord of Riverrun at them. I'm sure that'll be enough to put the fear of the gods in them. You, nephew, are a fucking disappointment. It was clear to him that nothing he had said and done had gotten through to Edmure, had it gotten through to Cat. Had she listened? Or had they played him? Had they told him what he had hoped to hear? He spent the rest of the day finding out as much as he could about the attack, surprised to hear that, at first, a raven had arrived, telling of its success, before another arrived, telling of its failure. Why, 2 ravens? Surely a maester wouldn't send news that the boy had fallen without seeing him for himself. Surely he'd wait and confirm the boy's death before letting the realm know of such a thing. Unless... No, it couldn't be. Would they do that? Would anyone do that? There you are, Saprin, Brynden. Come. It's steak and kidney pie tonight, with onions and gravy. You've not lived until you've had one of Gage's pies, sir. Jory said, and he smiled and followed the man into the great hall. He looked to the high table to see Eddard, Lady Serwyn, his grandniece, and nephew sitting there, taking his seat beside his good nephew. He found it hard to speak for most of the night, his mind in turmoil, feigning tiredness as the reason for his lack of conversation. He instead watched while his mind went over things. He noticed how easily Lady Serwyn spoke to the children, to Eddard, how at ease they were, and that voice in his head threatened to rise up again. Uncle Blackfish, could I be a knight? Brandon asked, and he smiled at the boy. Of course you could, lad. In fact, when you're older, how about being my squire? Could I, father? Could I? The boy asked, excitedly. Aye, if you're good, lad, Eddard said, and the boy agreed. He would be, before reaching down to talk to the wolf and tell him he was going to be a knight. Could I squire too? Arya asked, and he shook his head, telling her ladies couldn't be squires, and chuckled as she groused, saying she wasn't a lady, and that boys had all the fun. He ate and then drank far more ale than he should, finding himself, while not drunk, at least well on the way to being so. Laying down in his bed that night, though his mind was once again filled with thoughts of Jon Snow, thoughts of whether or not his niece and nephew had once again tried to kill a child. Though as he slept, as he drifted off, it was to dreams. Dreams of lions and a white wolf tearing down the gates of Riverrun. Dreams of his home in flames. Casterly Rock 2094 AC. Jaime, while as always he was glad to have his brother with him, he found his happiness tempered by what was to come. They would allow him to settle back in. Allow him to rest up and enjoy the calm, because the storm was coming, so each of his family greeted him, and Jon took Oberyn away, giving them more time alone with Tyrion, though it was what had happened with Jon and Daisy's condition which Tyrion seemed most concerned about. What do you plan to do? He asked him, as they sat in the solar an hour later, having gone over events both from his and Tyrion's side. Wait for now. Wait? Jon was right, Tyrion. We know them. We know their plans. We can watch them, and should it need be, we can change our minds and deal with them, but the more he explained it to me, the more it makes sense. Explain it to me. Tyrion said clearly, not convinced. So he did. He explained it all, and Tyrion nodded, adding little things to it before laughing when he was done speaking. He really is a wolf. Not only, he said, and his brother nodded. What of Lamara? Strange man. He keeps looking at me oddly, but I think he's trustworthy. He thought we were there to kill him. He did? I got down on his knees and asked us to make it clean. He knows things. We'll see more when he speaks to Jon. Braziers and this Magister? I don't know, Yami. I can't understand his game. Jon will look to rescue him, he said. Aye, at least his aunt seems safe. You saw her? No, but we heard of her. She and the Hound are proving far more difficult to capture than the Magister expected, even if he claims it to be his goal to help. Jon was right, he said, laughing, and Tyrion looked to him. The Hound, he said. He saw him in a vision, a large dog guarding a silver-headed girl. It seems sending him was the right thing to do, he said, and noticed Tyrion look away from him briefly when he said vision. Daisy? Soon, brother, you're soon to be an uncle, he said, and Tyrion smiled, reaching for the glass and pouring them both some wine. To Uncle Tyrion, his brother said with a laugh. Aye, Uncle Tyrion, he said, and though he laughed too, he felt bad doing so. Dinner that night was one of the happiest he could remember. Daisy was even feeling well enough to attend, and only grumbling a little bit when both Tyrion and Oberyn stared at her sighs. Illyria quickly sitting with her and speaking to her of things which helped with certain pains and aches, giving her a drink she had made which had Daisy seemingly far more comfortable after drinking. While Oberyn spoke to Syriza, Loras, Cregan, Satin, and Brienne, all of them listening eagerly as he told them story after story, while Jon kept Joy entertained and Tyrion and Jurian laughed. While Illyria and Daisy spoke quietly to each other, he found himself looking to Jenna, both of them wearing the same look on their faces, both of them no doubt finding themselves seeking Tyrion out, and both feeling trepidation at what was to come on the morrow. It will be all right, you know this, my love, Daisy said softly to him as they stood in their room later. He's going to be so hurt, Daisy, so hurt by it all, he said as he helped her undress before helping her to bed. Aye, he is, but you'll be there for him. We all will. Aye, he said, his arms going around her and kissing her neck softly before he inadvertently tickled her when his hair brushed against her ear. What was that Illyria gave you? He asked, as she laughed, and brushed his hair away. It helps with the back pain, some herbs. I felt so much better after it, she said. She'll make me some more. Back pain? You didn't tell me you were in pain. No, I didn't. You already treat me like I'm about to break. I wasn't giving you more excuses, she said, and he laughed before kissing her again. He found the night went far faster than he had hoped, found his appetite gone the next morning, and when Tyrion was finished eating, when Jaina and Jerian arrived, all four of them made their way down to the vaults. They walked through and past the rooms and out onto the beach itself to find Jon there with Arthur and the two dragons, Rhaenys and Rhaegar flying in the sky. By the gods, she's grown, Tyrion said, and Jaime and Jerian shuddered as the bronze dragon flew closer and looked at him and chirped only for Jon to speak, something they couldn't hear to it. Tyrion, there's something we need to tell you, he said, and waited for a moment until Jon arrived. The look on his face one of worry which Tyrion picked up on. What is it? What's wrong? While you were gone, I had a vision, Tyrion. A vision of the past, Jon said, and paused when Tyrion nodded. I saw something I wish I could forget. Something I wish I didn't have to tell you, but it's something you need to know. What is it? What's wrong? His brother said, looking from Jon to him. My grandfather was an evil man, Tyrion, far more than we ever knew. It seems that, I'm sorry, Tyrion. I'm so sorry, but Jon said and looked to him, though Jaime couldn't speak. Rhaegar wasn't the only woman Aerys forced himself upon Tyrion. He did it to your mother, too. Jaina said, and Tyrion looked to them all, shaking his head. He wouldn't, father. No, he couldn't. Father would have. Jaime, this isn't true. Please, tell me it's not true. Tyrion said, his voice almost breaking as he shook his head and began to back away from them, moving up the sand. It is, Tyrion. It is. But that's not all. The words not coming to him, he looked helplessly to his brother. Rhaegar was your father, nephew, not Tywin. Jerian said when Jaime couldn't, and Tyrion fell to his knees, Jaime moving to him as quickly as he could. Look at me. Look at me, you are my brother, Tyrion. You are my brother. Nothing anyone can say will ever change that. You are my brother, he said, his arms trying to drag Tyrion closer as he tried to pull away from him. I'm a monster. A monster. Sired by an even bigger monster. Rape spawn, dragon spawn. Tyrion shouted and the bronze dragon flew closer. The white one and Jon both trying to keep Rhaegar away. You are my nephew who I love. The furthest thing from a monster there could be. Jansa said as she too embraced his brother. Jericho came over too, and all three of them tried to hold him, his brother screaming as he sobbed, pulling away one moment and letting them pull him closer the next. Eventually, he calmed somewhat, and reluctantly they allowed him to move from them. Tyrion shaking his head and walking down the beach, he moved to follow, But Jon placed a hand on his chest, and he watched as Ghost took off after Targaryen, as he and the White Wolf went from their view as they then crossed over a dune. What if he's not safe? What if he tries to harm himself? He said, his voice full of panic. Ghost won't allow it. Give him some time. A little anyway. Jon said, and Jaime nodded in agreement. We should have told him differently. Better, softer. We should have done something, anything, he said, pacing in the sand a few moments later. He saw Jon's worried face, saw him looking over his shoulder, and turned to see what was going on. Seeing Jon's run towards them. My lord, you must come. It's time. The babe is coming. What? It can't? It's too soon, he said, looking out in the direction Tyrion had gone. It is happening now, my lord. Jardine says it is coming. Lady Dacey asks for you, Jardine said. I can't. I need to be. Tyrion. He needs me. Go, Jaime. Go. You too, Jaime. Garine and I will stay. Go. Jon said, and he found himself torn over what to do. He was practically dragged away by Jairus, and Jaina was standing in front of his room so quickly that he didn't even know how he'd gotten there, and was inside holding her hand before he had time to process anything. She is well? He heard Jaina ask, and then he looked down to see her. The sweat on his brow, the pained expression. He looked to the master, to Jaina, and then to Ilaria, who he had not even noticed when he entered. She is. The babe will be here soon. Jaime, Tyrion, how is he? Dacey asked, and he looked at her, grabbing a wet cloth, and wiped her brow. He is fine, my love. Nothing to worry about, he said, and she just nodded, allowing him to lie for now. Winterfell 2094 AC. Ned. He had allowed Brynden to settle, to get comfortable before he spoke to him, both for the man's sake and a little for his own. Seeing him arrive without Cat had been a surprise. Seeing him here at all had surprised him. That he had come after Cat had gone south. That he had come without her. Something didn't sit right with him about it. So they had eaten, drank, and he had spent the night, as he had many of them since his wife had left to visit her family, looking over the letters he had found. At first he had been so shocked at what Lie had taken him to, so caught out that he couldn't place the man's name with the man himself. Peter Baelish, not registering in his mind as that Peter, as Cat's childhood friend, as the man Brandon had almost killed. Instead, he had been wrapped up in the sheer number of letters, the fact that there were over 100 of them. He had been so wrapped up in trying to read through them, that he had missed it. Then when he had finished, when he was done reading them, when the shock wore off, it came to him who Peter Baelish was, and so he read them again and again, seeking answers. Clarity, though it was hard to find either. The letters on the face of it were innocent enough, though some of the subject matter was hard to take. Why was Cat speaking to this man about Jon? Why was he telling her things which were clearly not true? He dressed, broke his fast, and tried to put the letters out of his mind, tried to once again go about his daily business, but Brynden's mood seemed similar to his own, and so he decided to speak to the man, to clear up the bad feeling in his gut before it got worse. Brynden, have you seen the Godswood? He asked, walking towards his good uncle. Not yet, Eddard. Ned, Brynden replied. The two men walked, and he could see the odd look appear on his face when Brynden saw the weirwood walking over to the stream. He sat down on the log and bid him do likewise, though he felt a little naked doing so without ice. Why have you come here, Brynden? Truly, he asked, and Brynden sighed. I wish to see the North and my grandnephew. Wanted to see if the boy was someone I could feel hopeful for, someone I'd like to squire for me in the future. Brynden said, and Ned could tell while it was the truth, it was not the whole truth. Why now? Did Hoster write to you about Brandon? Brandon asked, and for the briefest moment he wondered if he'd known of the letter Hoster had sent to his father. But then he realized it was his son, not his brother. He was speaking of. No, he never did. After his death, I found some notes. He wished Brandon to foster with him, talked about speaking to you about his future. He never did. No, why do you ask? What's this really about, Brynden? My nephew's an idiot, Ned. A complete idiot. Before he died, my brother and I spoke. I think he may have been ready to name Brandon his heir instead of Edmure. He couldn't be suggesting what he thought. Could he? Was he really suggesting his nephew a Kingslayer? And if so, then what Luwin had said regarding the Tullys. Did this not make that more likely? Where is Cat, Brynden? She traveled to King's Landing with Edmure for his naming, and after that, I believe she planned to go to Highgarden, but I do not know for certain where my niece is. What is it you're not telling me? Ned asked, and the man shook his head. I'll not speak on things I do not know, Ned, not in case they're just the mistaken thoughts of an old man. All I'll say is my nephew is an idiot, and I hoped to see my grandnephew was not one. Then I'd ask to train the lad to be his knight, and he be my squire. He's too young. When he's older, perhaps. Why wait? Your bastard was what, 6 name days when he went west? Why not allow Brandon to go earlier? He's only 4 name days, Brynden. Aye, but I ask you to think on it, Ned. Brynden said, standing up. How much of an idiot is your nephew, Brynden? He asked as the man turned to walk away. You heard of King's Landing, of what happened? Aye. That was him being clever, Ned. Brynden said, shrugging and walking away. He ended up sitting there alone for far longer than he had imagined, Lykia walking over to him, eventually, and looking at him, her eyes, he swore, were full of concern. He picked a stone and threw it into the pool and watched as the fish scattered, Lykia growling at them as they did so. These were replies, returned thoughts, which meant that his wife had written as many the other way, that she had initiated this conversation, that this man's thoughts on his nephew had come in response to his wife's own. It was the last one he kept going to. The one which had come when Jon was due to arrive, her behavior clear in his head now. My dearest cat, I hope this letter finds you well, though the news I have to share will no doubt cause you concern. I dearly wish it was not so. I wish the news I shared with you would only ever bring you happiness and joy. But alas, that's not the way of life, and so, instead, I must warn you of the danger you may find yourself and your family in. It has come to my attention that, along with the Lannisters, Jon Snow intends to take Winterfell from your son. After he tricked Admir into a skewed duel, he was heard to brag about bringing the fishes down once and for all. I'm sorry to say he did so with no witnesses, my dearest one, for if he had, I could have brought it to Lord Arryn's attention and stopped him before he could put whatever plans he had into action. He was then heard to brag that soon your son would be reviled in the north, leading to him being declared heir. I do not know what plans he has to dispose of, young Brandon, but be wary, cat, for I'm sure he has some. I will continue to help in any way I can. Ask of me any service you wish, and if it's in my power to provide it, I shall. Be careful, cat, for I fear that perhaps your husband is not only aware of these plans, but may in some way be behind them. I remain, as always, your most loyal friend and servant. Vertias. This letter had laid out her fears and worries clearly. At first he had been furious at Baelish for saying such things, had wanted to tell Jon of him, to tell Jaime of him, but something at the back of his mind was telling him things were wrong, things were not right, that he was missing something, and until he found it, he would be wrong to speak on it. It was clearer now that this was in response to the things Kat had said. This man was telling her what she wished to hear, feeding her paranoia over Jon, adding to it, and he at first couldn't be certain why. This man was in love with his wife. Still, after all these years, he was willing to help her, and was now master of coin. The letters, his wife's absence, the attacks on Jon, Brendan's arrival, his cryptic words, all of it, it was clear, his wife. The knock on the door took him from his thoughts, and he placed the letters back in his drawer and opened it to find Luwin standing there. A raven, my lord, for Highgarden, Luwin said, and handed him the scroll, the rose of Highgarden's seal clear. Lord Stark, we've just had to cut short a visit from your wife after she upset Sansa greatly, and was flippant and dismissive of the terrible news we had at the time believed to be true regarding Jon. I had no choice but to order her to leave. She did not do so gracefully. I assure you I place no fault with you, nor with Sansa, who will write to you with her own thoughts on the matter. I just wished you to be informed. I will not have a woman speak ill of Jon in my home, and to do so when we believe he had passed was not something I'd expect from a godly woman. Lady Olenna. He waited until Luwin had gone, sat down hard on the bed, placing his head in his hands. Cat, what have you done? He said, his voice tinged with both sadness and anger. Casterly Rock, 2094 AC. Jon. The beach was quiet, just he and Geryon sitting there waiting while Arthur stood far enough back he could barely be seen. He could sense Tyrion's sadness, his anger, and he knew that he was rubbing the White Wolf as they waited, his movements far calmer than he would have expected. Rosiarts was flying over him, keeping Lygaron away, trying to tell his son that yes, his rider was hurting, but now was not the time. Now he needed space. Soon, my son, soon you can go to him. For now, let him be, he said in his mind, and the bronze dragon reluctantly agreed. Watch him, Rhae, he said, and she told him she would. Geryon just kept looking up the beach to where Tyrion was. Jon could tell he wanted nothing more than to get up and go down there, to be with his nephew, to comfort him if he could. though he occasionally looked the other way too, to the vaults, to where Jaime had gone, to where Daisy was bringing a new cub into the world. "We should go to him," Jerian said, and he shook his head. "He doesn't want us to, my lord. He wishes to be alone. Give him time." "Is he safe?" "Well, he is safe, and he will be well. He's handling it better than I had hoped. Or he's not handling it at all, Jon." "I think he is, but you could be right. I'll go." "Maybe it's better if I go, Jon." "Trust me, it's not," he said, and Jerry nodded. He walked slowly down the beach, finding Tyrion almost snuggled against Ghost. He was that close to him. He closed his eyes and thanked the wolf for looking after his family. And Ghost looked to him, and he felt it in his head, pack, and despite the circumstances, he smiled. "May I sit?" he asked, and Tyrion nodded. "I understand you know better than anyone. It's why I didn't want to tell you. Why Rhaegar and I fought so much." "Why would you fight with a dragon?" "I'm a dragon. We fight," he said. And though it was a jape, neither of them laughed. "I'm a monster, a child of rape," Tyrion said, his self-disgust clear. "When Annie first told me the truth, I felt that way. A monster, a child of rape, that's what I had been told, you see, what I had believed had happened to my mother, that she had been kidnapped and raped by my father. Of course, I didn't know she was my mother or that he was my father when I heard that over the years, but later, when Jaime told me, that's how I felt." "Your mother wasn't raped, though, was she?" "Mine was, by your grandfather," Tyrion spat out. "I know, but I understand. I get it, how it makes you feel. How it hurts you, and as hard as you may find it to believe, it actually makes no difference at all." "What the fuck are you talking about, Jon? How can you say that?" "It makes every fucking difference. I'm a child born of rape. It makes a fucking difference," Tyrion said angrily. "Ah, you are, and it makes no fucking difference at all. Just as being a bastard makes no difference, or being trueborn, none of it fucking matters, Tyrion. None of it. You are who you are, not because of your birth, but because of you," he said, and Tyrion looked at him, shaking his head. I'm a brother, a nephew, an uncle, and soon to be an uncle again." "What?" "Daisy is having her babe. You're about to become an uncle again," he said, a smile on his face. "Again?" "Aye, uncle, again," he said, looking to him, Tyrion looking at him before realization dawned in his face. "Jon, I know this is hard. I know you'll need time to deal with it. I did. But you haven't changed, Tyrion. No one feels any differently about you, not even me. I considered you my family before this. This just confirms we are kin. I fucking hate Eris with every ounce of my being for what he did to my grandmother, to my grandfather and uncle, to your mother, but you are my uncle, my family, my blood. For that, I'm grateful." They sat in silence for a bit, and Tyrion looked out as the dragons dropped. Jon feeling Rhaegar trying to speak to him, trying to come into his head. "He is yours, you know," he said. Then, a moment later, "What?" "Rhaegar, he is yours. You are his rider. He's waiting for you. You're giving me your dragon." "He is not my dragon. He chooses you, Tyrion. I think he did it from the first moment he saw you," Jon said, remembering how the bronze dragon reacted when he first saw Tyrion. "When I was a child, Jerian asked what gift I wanted for my name day. I begged him for a dragon. It wouldn't even have to be a big dragon, I told him. It could be little like me." Tyrion said, a small smile on his face. "The uncle, like you, will cast a large shadow," Jon said, and stood up. "Your niece or nephew is about to be born. Do you wish to stay here or go see them?" "Let's go, nephew. I can wallow later," Tyrion said, and Jon nodded. Jerian nodded at him as he walked towards them, and he gave him a soft smile and looked on as Jerian knelt down and hugged Tyrion. Jon told Rhaenys and Rhaegar that he'd speak to them later, the bronze dragon seeming to be happier for now. He knew Tyrion still wasn't there yet, that he'd not fully come to terms with things, but the babe had probably picked the best time to arrive for him at least. After telling Jorah and Sarella to help Rhaenys and Rhaegar in, they took the lift up and found Loras and Joy outside Jaime's room with Jaina there too. Once she saw Tyrion, she went over and whispered into his ear, and Jon was relieved to see the small smile. "Where are the others?" he asked Lord Yes. Oberyn offered to do some sparring with them, but Joy wanted to come here. "Dave is coming, Jon." "He is another little cousin for you, Joy," he said, and she smiled. "When?" "Soon," he said, and she nodded, walking over to stand beside him. "Tyrion sad?" she asked, and he hid his chuckle when after he nodded, she ran to Tyrion to give him her biggest hug. He ended up having to take Joy for something to drink, bringing back something for each of them. It wasn't for lack of servants, but hearing the noise from inside, he worried it would scare her. Not long after they got back, they heard the sound of a babe crying, and after a few more moments, Jaime walked out. The smile on his face only getting larger when he saw Tyrion. "Is everything all right? Daisy as well?" Jaina asked, and he nodded. "She is. She and our daughter." Jaime said, looking to Tyrion. "Joanna Lannister," he said. And Jon watched as Tyrion nodded and wiped his eyes. It was the next day he saw her. The babe was laying in a small crib. She looked so small, so delicate, her hair almost as dark as his, her eyes a vivid green. After speaking to Daisy and finding out she was feeling much better, he talked to Jaime and told him of how Tyrion had reacted. Jaime surprised he seemed to be taking it so well. "It will hit him again, my lord, I think the babe. Other things have taken it a little from his mind." "What do we do about others, Jon? Do we tell them?" Jaime asked. "There's lots of time for that. Enjoy your daughter, my lord. Make sure Daisy is well. We'll deal with things as they come." Over the next few days, he noticed Tyrion drinking a little more. So he spoke to Oberyn, who told him he was hiding whatever it was inside him, and so he spoke to him again. Though nothing really came of it, instead, Jon asked Tyrion and Jaina to speak to him, as it seemed it was partly that Tyrion wasn't sure how their relationship worked for now and needed more time. "My lord," he heard the voice as he stepped from the lift. "Walder on guard today." "Master, I do not know if I'm still one, so perhaps it's best to call me by name, Dollar Lamara," the former maester said. "Isozi?" he asked, and the man smiled and nodded. "I was born in Bravos, but came here when very young to study at the Citadel," Dollar said as they walked. "Why?" "I wish to work for the Targaryens, my lord." "Jon," he said, and the former maester nodded. "Jon, why work for the Targaryens? And if so, why not just work for them? Why go through the expense and training at the Citadel? An old friend told me I'd be needed here one day. She told me this many years ago when I was just a boy." "An old friend, a story for another time. I've been catching up on some of the things you've done, Jon. Incredible achievements for one so young. I've had some ideas, Dollar. Others have seen them through," he said. And the man just laughed quietly. "You are just like him, you know." "Like who?" he said, his mind already telling him what he was going to say. "Your father," Lomara said, and Jon was about to say something, when Melisandre walked from the lift. "Jon," she said, obviously noticing something in his expression. "Lady Melisandre, this is Dollar Lomara, the former maester of Dragonstone." "My lady, Jon, I must get back to my work," the maester said, turning and beginning to walk away before turning back. "Blood is the key, Jon. The Red Priests know this. There is power in King's blood, and magic needs power," he said, and then walked away. "That man was a master?" Melisandre asked, and Jon nodded. "Aye, he delivered my sister," he said, and she looked at him and nodded. "What he said about King's blood, is this true?" "There is power in all blood, Jon. King's blood is powerful. Yes, yours more than any. Why? You are his chosen." He spent the day playing on the beach with Joy. She felt even happier that not only was coming down to the vault, the Yinshur, but it was secret, and she got to see the dragons. Though she had actually spent most of the day chasing Ghost and Dusk through the sand and making sure Cregan and Loras helped her. He sparred before dinner with Brenny and Satin, as they still couldn't come down to the vaults. He was missing time with them, and so had resolved to try and make some more. That night he spoke to Sorella about what Lamara and Melisandre said, before she then went to eat with Ilaria and Oberyn, leaving him alone with the dragons. Laegar was annoyed Tyrion hadn't come to him yet, and Jon laughed each time the dragon complained, even more so when he and Rhaenys argued over his complaining. "You're behaving like a child," Rosiak said. "I am a child," Laegar said. "You're a dragon," Rhaenys said. "A small dragon." "A dragon still." "You were right, father. She is bossy." "I am not bossy." "What?" "He acts like I'm not bossy." "Tell him." He decided not to mention her bossing him to tell Laegar she was not bossy. Prove the bronze dragon's point, and instead, in his most serious voice, just did as she had bossed him to do. "Rosier is not bossy." Thankfully, Lugaron decided to leave it at that, and the dragons decided to rest after eating. Jon walked to the glass candles, deciding to practice once more. Taking them out, he lined them up, and he found, to his annoyance, nothing he could do seemed to stop the images from changing. No amount of concentration, it seemed, would help. He was about to put them back when the idea hit him. So, taking his knife, he cut his hand and allowed the blood drip on them all, one by one. Looking at it again, he noticed the flame on top of the green one was different, brighter, the others seeming even less alight than usual. Beginning again, he tried, and to his delight, it began to work. He asked for Highgarden, and the first of the black candles showed him the keep. It was the first time he'd seen it, and it looked amazing. Thinking of Margai, he saw her then, laying asleep, her eyes closed and her arms wrapped around her pillow. Asking for Sansa, he saw the image change and saw Fang and his little sister asleep in bed. Turning to one of the others, he asked for Winterfell, and saw it. Asked for his uncle, and saw him drinking at the high table, while around him people did the same. He asked for the wall, for Castle Black, and saw the keep coming to him. The men drinking in the common hall, he soon saw Benjen and Aemon, Ser Alazar and Ser Jeremy. He turned to the last and thought of his aunt and saw her and the hound ride with a woman he didn't recognize. Heading towards a city by the sea in the distance, he asked for his uncle and the image faded, and then he asked for Viserys, and he realized he needed to be clearer. The image of his uncle, tied up in the back of a cart, came to him quickly. He asked for Oberyn and saw him, and Ilaria, and what they were doing led him to quickly asking to see Tyrion instead, finding him drinking with Jurian. He sat back in the chair, looking from candle to candle, seeing each of them, seeing the images stay steady and clear. As he leaned forward, he looked to the first one yet again and asked for the past. He asked for his mother, and he cried as he saw a woman ride a horse over lands. He knew well, as he saw her hair flying behind her, the smile clear on her face. Castoroli, Rock 29C4 AC. Oberyn. The news of the babe had lifted spirits temporarily at the Rock. Both he and Ilaria had given their best wishes to the new parents, and he had even been allowed to hold the babe, something only possible in this strange new world he lived in. Being welcomed at Casterly Rock, being friendly with Lannisters, holding Jaime Lannister's babe in his arms, all of it had become second nature, which was strange in of itself. But while most of the inhabitants were celebrating, and while on the face of it so was Tyrion, it was clear to him, and even more so to Ilaria, that something was wrong with their friend. Even without his nephew's words, he'd have noticed. He was drinking more, was quieter, and less quick, with a smile or a laugh. It was almost as if he was forcing himself to look happy, even if he was anything but. "You should speak to him, my love," Ilaria said as he dressed. "We should," he said back, and she shook her head. "No, sometimes men need men. Go speak to him. I'll be there for him when he needs me," she said as he kissed her and left the room, taking the lift up to the family wing. Tyrion was not a morning person usually. Both he and Ilaria had found that out during their time with him, and no amount of teasing could change it. So, seeing him breaking his fast alone only made Oberyn that much more determined to get to the bottom of whatever it was that was on his mind. He took his seat beside him quietly, didn't speak, and just watched as Tyrion went through the motion of eating, as he sat there almost in a daze. "What?" Tyrion asked, and looked surprised to see him there. "Ta, my friend, it's time we talked." "I'm fine, Oberyn," Tyrion said, shaking his head. "Don't make me carry you," he said. And Tyrion looked at him expecting to see a smile, but instead he found him standing there looking at him with a serious expression on his face. Reluctantly, Tyrion followed him, and they took the lift to the bottom and walked into the vaults, Tyrion glaring at him all the way. They passed Jon's room, and he saw the small look Tyrion gave to the door. Then, as they walked out to the beach, Tyrion hesitated. "I don't want to go out there." "Tyrion?" "No." "Tyrion, look at me," Oberyn said, kneeling down to look him in his eyes. "We must talk, please, my friend. Talk to me." Tyrion didn't reply, but he did nod, and so they walked out onto the beach. The sun was beaming down, and the beach was empty. He saw Tyrion look to a spot further up, but he instead brought him to the water's edge. Grabbing a shell from the ground, he rolled it in his hands, and then leaning back, threw it as far into the water as he could. He bent down and repeated the process, before turning to hand one to Tyrion. "What do you want me to do with this?" Tyrion said, his voice sullen. "Throw it as far as you can. Go one, show me." Surprisingly, he both threw it and threw it a fair distance. Oberyn bent down and picked up another, and then another, and then another. For the next hour, the two of them stood there, silently throwing shells. Finally, Tyrion spoke, his words barely being able to be heard above the sound of the waves, his voice choked with emotion. "I killed my mother. My sister always told me I did. She always blamed me for it. But Jaime told me I didn't, that it was just the way of the world, that I couldn't. Shouldn't be blamed, But he was wrong. I killed her. I'm the reason she is dead. Tyrion said, his voice breaking. Have we? I'm the man who killed her. I'm the reason she was killed. They killed her because of me. They killed her to stop me from being born. Tyrion said, and Oberyn looked to see him, wiping his eyes. You are not to blame. They and the control they seek to wield. They used your mother's death to fuel your father's rage. My father's rage didn't need fuel. Tyrion almost spat out. What fuel does a madman need? No, the only fuel my father ever needed was wildfire. Had he his way, he'd have burned them all. Oberyn looked at him confused. Tywin was an evil man, but even he didn't consider him mad. Wildfire. What did he mean by wildfire? Tyrion, I am a child of rape, a monster. How am I supposed to live with that? How am I supposed to live knowing what Aerys did to her, knowing that because of me they killed her, they killed my mother because she carried a child raped into her by a madman, Tyrion said, and almost fell to the ground. He sat down so hard. It took him a few moments to figure it out. A few more moments, and then when he did, he too sat down hard. Reaching over, he put his arm around Tyrion's shoulder and pulled him toward him, Tyrion sobbing as he did so. You are not a monster, nor are you the reason for your mother's death. She would not blame you were she here. Speak to Ellair, ask her how a mother feels. Speak to Daisy, and ask her would she give her life for her babes. She's not here. She never had a chance. Rorin, she never had a chance. Tyrion replied, shaking his head. I know, my friend, I know. But you live, so be what she would have wished you to be. Be what she would have wanted you to be. I don't know what that is. Be a brother, Tyrion, an uncle, a nephew, a cousin. Speak to your family. They love you and you them. My nephew has a new uncle, one I'm proud to call kin. Be there for him as he will for you. They sat there for a few more moments, Tyrion sitting quietly looking out at the sea. The waves almost calming him. While he sat there looking at his friend, he was still in pain. But he hoped he'd helped even a little. Eventually Tyrion rose to his feet and they began to walk back to the vaults. Entering, Tyrion stopped him and looked up at him, nodding before heading to Jon's room. He hoped he took whatever comfort he could there, and as he walked towards his own room, as he prepared to tell Alaraya what had been bothering Tyrion, he cursed Aerys yet again. Never had a man caused so much distress, so much hurt. Never had a man deserved to rot in the seven hells as much as Aerys Targaryen. Highgarden 2094 AC. Olenna. After telling Catelyn to leave after seeing her gone, Olenna had written to Winterfell to inform Ned Stark. She knew politically she had been rash, but the woman had forced her hand. She had caught her in her own genuine grief over Jon's death, not just in the sense of loss over what it means for her family's prospects, but actual grief for the boy himself. Olenna had been surprised by her own reaction, at first putting it down to knowing how hurt Margaery was by the news, but now in the cold light of day, she realized she had grieved for him too. This was why her granddaughter, coming to her with Sansa and telling her that Jon was alive, that there had been some mistake, wasn't met with the relief that Margaery would still be queen, but with the happiness that Jon was alive. How could you know this? Have we received a raven? She asked, and Margaery shook her head. No, grandmother, Fang told me. Fang? She asked as both she and Sansa looked at her granddaughter in bewilderment. Jon, he was in Fang. It was a mistake, grandmother. Something went wrong. How could Fang tell you? What do you mean Jon was in her? Sansa said before she had a chance to ask the same questions. He warged into her. She showed me, and then when I asked her, she told me. Jon told me. Margaery said, her smile beaming as she did so. Olenna tried to get her thoughts clear in her head. She knew of the warging, she had seen it in action, but that was a bird, and one that was just outside the keep. Was it even possible for someone to do this? Could someone actually do it over that distance? She looked to Sansa, who was looking both shocked and disbelievingly at Margaery. Evidently, she didn't think so either, and so she was on the verge of getting upset. He warged like the bird? She said more to stop Sansa's upset than because she believed in what Margaery had said. He did, grandmother. But how did you know it was him, sweetling? Margaery told her then of the drawing and the silver case she kept it in, of how she had been holding it in her hands, of how Fang had pushed against her and against the drawing, of how the wolf had then looked into her eyes, and when she questioned it, had told her it was Jon and he was safe and well, while her own doubts were somewhat assuaged by what her granddaughter said. Sansa's, it seemed, were not. I saw Jon do this myself. Sansa, if Margaery says it was Jon, she said. and saw the girl's posture relax and the smile return to her face. "Why don't you two go get some sleep? We'll speak on this on the morrow. With any luck, we'll receive a raven soon." She kissed both their foreheads as they left and walked over to pour herself a mug of water. It had been a trying day, now a trying night, also. But as she climbed back into her bed, she felt far better than she had an hour or so earlier. She hoped when she woke a raven would have arrived. As much as she may hope Margaery was Reet, as much as she may believe her, she needed more tangible proof. The next day, it wasn't a raven which arrived as they broke their fast. It was a man. A man she soon learned who should have arrived days before, as she looked him over in her solar. As she read the letter he handed her, she both glared at the man and felt her ire rise at the letter. "Why were you delayed?" "My horse broke a leg. I had to walk for a few miles before I found somewhere to buy another. It added some days to my journey." "Very well, my man. We'll see you rested and fed," she said, and the man left, and she looked over the letter again. "Lady Olenna, a plot has been uncovered to see me dead. An assassin hired by Catelyn Tully, Edmure Tully, and Pater Baelish. The man hired, though, is a man who works for my master of Whisperers. I have decided to use this plot, to benefit from it, and to do that I intend to act out a mummery. Ravens will be sent informing the realm of the success of the assassination and of my death. A few days later, ravens will be sent speaking the truth of my survival. I will use this opportunity to expose those who stand against me, those who would never stand by my side, be they lords, ladies, maesters, or whomever. My men are watching and taking note. Let the fishes celebrate and the mockingbirds sing. Let them rest easy in their beds, thinking their work done. Then let them worry, let them ponder their failure and fear the retribution. Dragons burn, my lady, and wolves stalk. Today I intend to be a wolf, but the hour of the dragon will soon be at hand. Jon. It annoyed her that had she received this letter late, had she known of it earlier, then she, Sansa, and Margaery would not have needed to worry so, would not have felt the grief they did. Another part of her, the more vengeful part, the part which she too would release on occasion, enjoyed the letter immensely. Cregan Stark had unleashed the hour of the wolf on an unsuspecting realm, removing enemies of the crown with great and ruthless efficiency. "Why be a wolf or a dragon when you can be both?" she said as she held the letter to the candle and watched it burn. It took another couple of days for the ravens to arrive, one for her and one each for Margaery and Sansa, and seeing both girls' smiling faces when they read the truth from Jon's own hand brightened up Highgarden for days. She found herself laughing as she had to turn down requests from both of them to go to Casterly Rock to see Jon for themselves. Found the little stomp her granddaughter did as she left her room annoyed at her to be incredibly amusing. She understood the sentiment. A part of her felt the same way too, but a letter, raven scrolls, and a warging were enough to prove Jon was well. And so, while she would like to see him again, for now, they had their own lives to lead. When Margaery came to speak to her on the warging, on how Sansa was having dreams of being a wolf, she found herself shocked. "She dreams this at night?" "She does. She told me something most strange, grandmother," Margaery said. "Stranger than dreaming yourself a wolf?" she asked with a small chuckle. "She says that she's woken up with the taste of blood in her mouth, that when she's looked to Fang, she's seen blood in the wolf's mouth too." "She can taste it?" "Aye, she can." "That is most strange. I'll ask Willis to see if he can find out more. Has she spoken to him of this?" "I think she's embarrassed to," Margaery said, and she nodded. "Perhaps we should go visit Jon. I'm sure he'd be able to help her through this," her granddaughter said as innocently as she was able. "You think those games work on me, child?" she said, and watched her granddaughter smirk and shake her head. "It was worth a try. Has she written the letter to her father?" "She has, grandmother. She was most cross indeed when writing it." "Good. I'll have it sent to Old Town and by ship to Winterfell. With any luck, it'll arrive there before Catelyn Tully does," she said, noticing Margaery's grimace at the fish's mention. "Good." She had almost given in to Margaery's request. Her granddaughter was right. Jon could help Sansa, but a part of her feared it too. She needed to know more of this warging, more of what was capable with it. Could it be learned? Was it just a Stark thing? What were its limits? Yes, she needed to know more. So she sent her maid to find Willis. This was something that needed to be looked into. Norbos 24 AC. Dynium. Despite Sandor's misgivings, they made their way to the Red Temple. Entering, she could sense his discomfort at the flames all around him. She wanted to go take his hand in hers, to offer up whatever comfort she could, but she knew how he'd respond. he'd just tell her to fuck off, so instead she offered him her warmest smile and saw him nod in return. Rhaegar took her to the high priest, and Darius was everything she'd expected of one. He was tall, with long dark graying hair, his eyes a sparkling blue. Were it not for the scars on his face, then she'd have thought him handsome. "Welcome, Princess Daenerys. Sandor, I've been looking forward to seeing you both." Darius said, his voice softer than she had expected. "Why?" Sandor asked angrily. "I am an instrument of my god's will, and Rhaegar has bid me help you on your journey." "How can you help?" she asked. "I require a drop of your blood, princess, for the flames. You will find the answers you seek in them." "Fuck this. Let's go," Sandor said, and she shook her head. "If you're playing me false, priest, my friend and I will not take kindly to it," she said, making her voice as tough as she could make it sound. "I promise you, princess, I am not. The visions are for you both." "If you will," he said, motioning to the brazier. She moved closer while Sandor did not. Taking her knife, she cut the wound on her hand and allowed a drop of blood fall into the flames. She saw a woman wearing a red mask which covered her face. She, Sandor, and the woman rode on a boat towards a city. She saw a long bridge and black walls, a temple rising high to the sky. She saw a woman with long dark hair smiling and beckoning her inside, her red robes shining as she did so. She saw her eggs laying on some stones. She saw a small bottle of green liquid placed on top of them, and watched as she cut her hand and dropped her blood onto each of the eggs. She moved back and saw the arrow fly, its tip covered in flames, and then she saw green fire burn for some time, and when it stopped, the dragons emerged. She saw them on her shoulders, one black and red, one green and bronze, and one cream and gold. The red priestess smiled, as did the woman in the mask, while Sandor knelt in front of her. The images changed then, and she saw a small boy on a bronze dragon, his red and black outfit clear. She saw a dark-haired man on a white dragon flying beside the boy, the dragon's four legs marking him different. He too was dressed in black and red. She saw herself riding the black dragon, her hair flying in the wind. She was also dressed in the colors of her house as she flew beside the other two. When the flames died down, she turned to look at Sandor, seeing the shocked look on his face, whether or not he'd seen what she had. He had seen something, and she took great relief in that. She turned to Darius and Rhaegar, both of them standing looking at her, seemingly waiting for her or Sandor to speak. "What trickery was that?" she asked. "No trickery, princess. What you saw was your future. What you do with that is up to you." "The city?" she asked. "I do not know what you speak of, princess. You saw a city." She described it to him, and he nodded before looking to Rhaegar, then shaking his head when she described the woman to him. "The city is Volantis, princess. The great temple of Rose stands there. But this woman, I must warn you from this woman, this witch, this sorceress. She is evil, princess. It's best you stay away." "Then why is your god showing her with me?" she asked, and the man shook his head, leaving them standing there with just Rhaegar. "I can take you to this woman, princess," Rhaegar said, and both she and Sandor looked at her suspiciously. "Why you and not him?" Sandor said. "Darius believes the woman to be evil, but my god has shown her to you, which means she has a part to play. Our duty is to serve our lord, not to question him. What can you tell me about her?" "I do not know much, princess, only that she owns a small sailing boat and she arrived back here only yesterday." She looked to Sandor and saw he too thought this more than a coincidence, that he too thought this strange. Still, the images she'd seen in the flames, the dragons, the man, the boy, her husband, her son, where did those dragons come from, and where had the other two gone? These questions plagued her mind, yet it was the idea, the thought, the hope of dragons being born which won the day. "We will go back for our things. Meet us at the tavern," she said, and Rhaegar nodded. Sandor waited until they were some distance from the temple before he turned to her, his face full of fury. "You don't actually believe those fuckers, do you? What did you see in the flames?" "Nothing. I didn't fucking look in the fire," he lied, and she looked to him again. "Sandor, please. What did you see?" "Dragons. I saw the sky filled with dragons," he said, and she smiled. She found the eggs where she'd hidden them. Grabbing their things, they soon collected their supplies and waited. Rhaegar arriving a few hours later, all three of them walked to the river's docks, finding numerous boats, large ones, small ones, some which looked ready to fall apart, before eventually finding the one they were looking for. 3 men stood on the deck, the small sail rising above them and the large poles resting above the water. "We've come to see the lady," Rhaegar said, and the oldest of the men looked at them. Sandor especially. She's been expecting you, Princess. You too, Clegane, he said, and both she and Sandor's hands instinctively moved to the weapons on their hips. You have nothing to fear here, Daenerys Stormborn. I give you my oath on that, she heard a soft feminine voice say from the cabin at the front of the boat. Turning, she saw a woman emerge, tall and slim, wearing a hooded robe and a red mask. The woman walked towards her before she looked dismissively at the Red Priestess and bid her join her. Come, Princess, we have a long journey ahead of us, and the tide waits for none. A journey? She asked, wondering just how much this woman knew, her knowledge of her name alone unnerving her. Volantis, we must wake dragons from stone, Princess. Who are you? She asked, and the woman's eyes stared at her almost as if they were trying to pierce her soul. You can call me Quaiti, for now at least.